welcome to Series 3 of Autism in Conversation with Auticon, a podcast from Auticon, a global IT consultancy whose consultants are all autistic. This series is designed to help raise greater understanding and appreciation of autism through fascinating conversations with inspirational guests. Hosted by me, Carrie Grant, each episode will feature fantastic guests from all walks of life who share a passion for making the world more inclusive. We'll be talking about the many benefits of hiring neurodivergent talent through to some of the more common challenges faced by autistic adults navigating the workplace, plus much, much more. All of my 4 children are neurodivergent. Yay! So this is a subject very close to my heart. I'm really looking forward to facilitating some great conversations about autism and hopefully learning some new things along the way. I hope you enjoy it too. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. Today, I'll be chatting to Virgin's Chief Purpose and Vision Officer, Holly Branson. Holly's also the founder of Big Change, chair of Virgin Unite, and first-time author, and a mother of 3. Wowza, she's a busy lady. She's also the daughter of Virgin founder Richard Branson, who was one of the first people to back Auticon, and someone who is also neurodivergent himself. Welcome, Holly.
Hello.
It's so lovely to have you with me on this podcast. I've admired you from afar for a very long while.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's so wonderful to talk about these topics and just get the information out there. So it's really wonderful to be here today.
Yeah. So let's start. If we could just give a little bit of background on you, because you've done lots of different roles, haven't you? And had quite, you've moved around a bit. So tell us a little bit about the shape of your career path and where it's landed now.
Yeah. So as you say, I've had different roles. It hasn't been a linear line for me in my career. I grew up always wanting to be a doctor. From the age of 3, that was my life goal, my life passion. And I was one of those kids that whenever anyone asked me all the way through my childhood, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always said I wanted to be a doctor. That never changed. Like most kids, you want to be a doctor one day, a nurse the next,
Sure.
superhero the next. And for me, it wasn't like that. I had this goal in my mind of what I wanted to do, which actually made life at school so much more easier because I knew the subjects I needed to take. I knew how hard I needed to work. And I managed to get into medical school, which was literally my dream come true. And then I worked as a junior doctor in London at Chelsea and Westminster. And I never wavered and always loved it until in my second year, you get randomly allocated jobs in the NHS. Well, you did 20 years ago. No, I don't know if things have changed now. And I got given a purely surgical rotation. And I just knew I didn't want to be a surgeon. I much prefer to be with awake patients and people I can talk to. And so I was just chatting to my mum and dad at dinner one day, and they said, "Why don't you take a year out of medicine and then reapply the following year?" And I didn't even think that was an option. And when I spoke to lots of doctors, they're like, "No, lots of people do this." And so that's what I did. And in that year out, I did an internship at Virgin, around all the different Virgin companies, from Virgin Atlantic to Virgin Trains, Virgin Media, Virgin Money, all the big ones. And my 1-year internship turned to 2, which turned to 3, because I was just really enjoying what I was learning. And at sort of 3 years, I realized I was never going to go back to medicine. And my role at Virgin has predominantly been purpose-based. I've been embedding our purpose, which is changing business for good, into the very heart of everything that we do as a brand. Virgin has had sort of purpose at the heart of it. Dad set up Virgin to do the right thing for people from the very beginning, but we didn't sort of formally have a strategy on how we're going to amplify that around all of the different Virgin group. And so that's what sort of I was being charged with for the last 10 years with our amazing purpose team. And it's great. I get to work with the most amazing Virgin people in all the different Virgin companies, literally all over the world. And so as much as I loved being a doctor, which I really, really did, I've never regretted that decision to change that course of career. And I've just loved what I do. And now I'm Chief Purpose and Vision Officer. So that's been 2 years I've been doing that role. And it's all about just making sure all of our companies have got meaning, and they really know how that what they do in society plays a big difference in people's lives for now and in the future, and looking after our planet. So that's my career. And then I love things like education, and I'm chair of Virgin Unite, and I've got a charity called Big Change, which focuses on education. I think the education system is still set up to really focus on exams, and it's not helping young people thrive in life. Kids are not leaving school prepared for the world of work, and so we sort of promote and invest in and partner with small scale charities to help them grow in the UK, and we backed 36 incredible projects over the last 10 years.
Wow, gosh. I could just take that in 100 different directions, what you said there. I love the ethos. I love the heart. I love this desire to do good. And I love the way that you are, as an organisation, trying to really put purpose as an important part of business, because we don't necessarily see those two things together. And you've also mentioned there, Holly, about education and exams, and these are areas that actually some of our autistic community are super good at exams and can just, they can just do exams very, very easily. But many, I run a support group for a couple of hundred families, and we know that the autistic girls and those assigned female at birth, and we know that exams are often not a good way to judge an autistic person. You miss out on so much. The interview structure and system that's set up for jobs. Autistic people don't always do really well on those kinds of things. So this really sets our divergent communities back. Could you tell us your thoughts on what diversity looks like from your point of view, from a kind of virgin point of view? What does it mean to you to be engaging with and looking at how you interact with your neurodivergent population?
Yeah, so I think, just sort of simply put, diversity means we've got to recognise and we've got to embrace and we've got to include everyone in society from all walks of life. Nobody should be excluded from anything. Just because someone might be neurodivergent or transgender or an immigrant, they might be a refugee or an ex-offender, it doesn't mean they should be excluded from any part of life. And I really think that we need to be celebrating these differences, because I think that's what makes the world so exciting, doesn't it? It makes it vibrant. Everyone needs to be given the opportunity to just be their true self without any barriers of discrimination. And I think that embracing diversity just makes life so much more fun and interesting. I was really lucky. I was brought up in a family that really valued getting to know different people, different cultures, and finding out about their lives. And I feel really extremely grateful to my mum and dad for instilling that in my brother and I, because it just makes life so much more fuller. When I think about neurodiversity specifically, I've got a dyslexic father, I've got a dyslexic husband, and I possibly have a dyslexic son. He's just going through all the tests. And so, but with Dad, I really knew, the pros and the cons, or the positives and the negatives of being dyslexic, and so it's really interesting to see that and see the struggles that have happened with that. But when I was younger, I went to a school where you had to go to either cadet training or you had to go to do volunteering. And I decided I wanted to go and volunteer in an autistic school when I was 16. And it was just so brilliant to learn those different forms of how you deal with different people. So the autistic school I went to, it was severely autistic kids who really struggled with any form of eye contact or physical touch. And, as a 16-year-old, my instinct was, if someone was upset, to give them a hug. And you learn very quickly that doesn't work with a very autistic person. And their teachers taught us how you can do very different things like clapping games, and you can have different ways of showing how you care towards an autistic person. I just think experiences like that, not only are they rewarding, but they teach you that everyone is different. And I think if we can educate more people to get firsthand experience in how everyone is really different, whether it comes to just differences in gender. I'm not 100% certain single-sex schools are the right way forward either. Different ethnicities, different sexualities. Everyone's got their different thoughts. I think everyone's got to have that really broad mindset and experience to be able to embrace people. And so I'm so grateful that I had that experience. It gave me a lot of an understanding of autism, and it made me understand the importance of really looking at a whole person, not just what you see on the outset, because the kids that I were with, it was quite nerve-wracking to begin with when you see someone rocking in a corner, or but when you take the time, you really just see how the personality in there of these young kids was absolutely incredible, and how bright they were. But on the surface, you couldn't necessarily see that. And if we could just try and get more people to have loads of different experiences, I think the world would be a better place.
Exposure is so important, isn't it? Otherwise, if we don't have exposure, we can very easily be afraid of the things that we don't know. I think also the intersections, it's very unlikely that someone is just going to be autistic. I think about just one of my children who is, mixed race, autistic, trans, queer. We're multiple. We've got multiple layers going on. But why is it important in the business world to engage with children like mine? I mean, my child is doing really well. They're on television. They've got a whole career. They're doing great. Thank you very much. And Lime Pictures, who make Hollyoaks, are brilliant. They're wonderful. But I don't see that everywhere. I really don't. What I see is judgment, and I see the things that you've just spoken about earlier as, you would be judged as woke. And that would be seen as a negative thing. And how do we get from that kind of being labelled woke to, well, I'm quite happy to have been awakened. I would rather be awake, to be honest. But, how do we shift that where it becomes a positive thing to include people who are out there on the margins?
Yeah, I think, luckily, I think that we're on a journey now, and that train has left the station. I think everyone's talking about it, which is utterly important. And I think that people have realised that diversity of thought is critical in society. And we focus on diversity of thought in business. It gives new perspectives, you get new ideas. I think it does encourage innovation. I think you break down barriers. And I really think that if you can be as diverse as possible, you are also helping your business reflect the communities that they serve. There's loads of research now also just to show that having a diverse workforce is really good for your profits. And so it doesn't have to be profit or purpose. That's one of the things that I bang on about, is that it both goes hand in hand. I think, what Auticon does with hiring people with autism is a really good example, as you know, Carrie. Like, many people on the autistic spectrum they're talented in ways a workplace needs. And I think that's the message that people have to get across. You're not doing that person, you're not being kind to that person doing something nice for them. You're doing something nice because your business also needs it too. And autistic people have the most amazing mindset when it comes to sort of lateral thinking and problem solving, pattern recognition. These are qualities that workplaces need nowadays. And it's just the right thing to do as well. Like, I really think it's such the right thing to do. We
see so often when leaders employ leaders, who they look at to build up as their, the legacy, the inheritance, who comes next. So often we have carbon copies, don't we? We have your cis-straight white man, Oxbridge educated, goes for the next exactly the same thing. So what are the blocks to that? Why is that? We know why it's happening in a way because it's historical, but what are the blocks now? If the train has left the station, why are we still not really seeing the fruit of that?
Yeah. To me, I think it's recruitment. I think, what Auticon's doing is absolutely brilliant. We need to have much more innovative ways of inclusive recruitment processes to make sure that we can reach those new people. Like, often, as you were saying, when it comes to, say, autistic people, interviews aren't the way that they're going to show their best self. And our process at the moment is firstly looking at exam results. Most companies still look at exam results, what university you went to, and then they get you in for an interview. Now, those two things are not right for everybody. And I think you've got to make sure you have a really broad range of ways that you're hiring people. I mean, we've started saying at Virgin Management, we're not going to look at exam results anymore. We've got two reasons why we're doing that. Is because, firstly, you have you're not narrowing down your people to just the ones that can pass exams. But also, I really feel that if lots and lots of businesses over the world start doing that, then people don't have to go to university to get the exams. There'll be other paths that people can take. So, I think that we've just got to make sure that we are looking for people's unique skill sets, and we have different ways that we can recruit. And I know that there's Audicon's one example, and I really like the way that you guys send people into companies to help settle in people who have autism when they've been hired for the role, because not everybody knows how you're meant to do that. So I think that's a big one. I would say recruitment, and then actually representation. I mean, as you were saying, it's like, you always hire people who look like you. Well, that seems to be typically what's happening. We just need more diversity in leadership. We need more diversity in marketing campaigns. And I know Dad with dyslexia, he's trying his hardest to make sure that dyslexia isn't a stigma anymore. And he's shouting about how for him it was a superpower. And I think for everyone with dyslexia, it is a superpower. I mean, I see how my son's brain works and the way he answers questions and the way his logical thinking. I'm like, oh my God, I'd love that in a business. And so I think it's things like that. It's trying to cut out those preconceived ideas on what people are with those labels, and absolutely trying not to stigmatize them.
Yeah, just going back a little bit then, Holly, what's Virgin's connection to Auticon, and how did that connection come about?
So we invested in Auticon. It was back in 2016. We were just so impressed with what the company was creating, employing people with autism and getting employment for those people, but also alongside that, helping businesses thrive as well. We have a purpose at business, changing business for good. At Virgin, changing business for good. And it's their overarching purpose for all of our businesses. Obviously, each individual one has their own one that's specific to their industry. But we are absolutely wanting all of our businesses to do the right thing for people, communities, planet. And so we just really believe that in that bracket is diversity and inclusion. It is high up there on our agenda. And so the work that Auticon's doing to change attitudes around autism and just give people with autism a voice is just crucial to inclusivity. And that's why we decided to back everyone there. And the team there are absolutely brilliant too. So we always back good people as well.
So in terms of what Virgin are doing, obviously you're working with Auticon, which is great, and thank you. We really appreciate that. I'm just, not that I work for Auticon, but just, I can see the impact on our community. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you for that. What are some of the best examples that Virgin has done to improve diversity and inclusion that other businesses can perhaps learn from? Yeah,
we've been thinking about this now for a long time. So I've been in the role for 10 years, and it's been on our agenda for all that time. So we've got a few things that we're doing now. Firstly, is the recruitment practices, that making sure your shortlist is as diverse as you would like it to be. So you can set yourself as high targets as you'd like to be, and I think the higher the better, really. But making sure that every single person that's interviewed is diverse. We within all of our Virgin companies, we have D&I groups, diversity groups, whether that be gender, ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, and social mobility. We have groups of people who self-select themselves into it. So anyone just volunteers to go and be part of those groups. And each V team member, senior leadership team member, I'm one of them, leads those groups. So I'm part of the ethnicity team. And it means that we meet monthly and we just talk about any issues that are arising within the company, but also any issues are happening across the UK and across the world. And also we really try and dig deep into what other companies are doing. Is anyone doing anything really game-changing in the world of ethnicity or in... and it's great. And it means that everyone feels that they're part of a conversation. So we can talk about topics because they're newsworthy at that time, or talk about topics about how we want to really improve a certain area. So that's worked really well, and we've been doing that for a long time, and that's been great. And I really think that we've learned a lot from our people. You learn so much. Businesses learn so much from their people, and actually probably learn more than your people than you do from the people at the top who are they are living and have their lived experiences and expertise, and so that's really important. Virgin Startup is our not-for-profit who gives loans to small startups in the UK, and also they do mentorship and sort of lots of different training programs. But they realised that in the UK, such a small percentage of startup funds were ending up in the pockets of women founders, female founders. And so they set themselves a target of 50-50. I mean, I think in the UK it's something like 3%. And for them at the beginning, it was 20%. And they were like, well, this is just not good enough. And so they set themselves a target of 50-50, equal numbers of male and female entrepreneurs. And what is just so encouraging to see is that because they had that target to aim to, they've managed to nearly get there. They're not quite there. They were really close. And then when COVID happened and loads of women dropped out of being entrepreneurs because they ended up focusing on family at home during coronavirus, the numbers slipped back, but we are now back up to about 47%. And they did that through easy things. I mean, things that they're so easy once you hear them, but until you hear them, you don't think about it. So they looked at they had someone come in, it was a gender consultant come in and have a look at what they were up to, and look at their website. Most of the people on their website were men, the pictures of people on their website. So, they changed that to 50-50. There's things you can do with all your prose that you have written alongside your website to make it more gender neutral and actually make it focus on women. So there's lots of stuff like that which you can absolutely learn from others. And until you hear it, you're like, oh my God, that's such a no-brainer. I can't believe that we weren't thinking that before. But that's really driving change. We've got, I could go on for ages. I don't know how many more you want to hear.
That's amazing. No, it's really good. And I think what I love, I think it's very easy sometimes when we are from a particular community or those, I talked about, I've got 4 neurodivergent children, also mixed race, different gender stuff, non-binary stuff, sexuality stuff. And I think that it's very easy for me to, I'm banging on my drum because I see my communities and I'm like, come on, guys. But I think if you're not from those communities, that's when, for me, we get the tipping point, is when we have people that they've got no skin in the game, that they're just people who can see this is the right thing to do. And it's what you started by saying, it's purposeful. It's good. It's actually good. It's business for good.
And I think that's the thing about the more and more businesses that start shouting about it publicly. I think you sort of give everybody then permission. It's a bit more daunting to being the first one. So Virgin Atlantic, quite a long time, they said to everyone, be yourself. They weren't expecting their hostesses to all wear the exact same makeup every day, and the stewards, of course. But be yourself. If you're a steward and you want to wear makeup, absolutely, that's fine. But just come to work feeling like you can be your whole self. And I think then you have a knock-on effect on the industry where other in that case, airlines think, oh, we can do this too. We don't have to make everyone dress, look 100% the same.
Yeah, I love that. Are there any other companies that you look at and you think, oh, I love what they're doing? Only because it was in the news this morning, but what Patagonia have done today about saying that 100% of its profits are now going to, or they're giving the company over to climate issues. These are big, purposeful things that businesses are doing now, and you can't really get bigger than that. There's lots of different things that people are doing. I think the support that goes out for the LGBTQ communities now, you just think 25 years ago, it wouldn't have been the same, and now it's brilliant that most companies are really standing behind the LGBTQ communities. That's wonderful. And when you look to the future, Holly, what are your hopes for the future when it comes to making the workplace more inclusive? What would you like to see?
I would like to see it more inclusive. I think the conversation's shifting. I think it's absolutely shifting in the right direction. I think more and more businesses are realizing that there is benefits to a truly inclusive workforce. More and more people are realizing there's benefits to a truly inclusive world. And I think what's great is it's, that's the shift. And I'm so happy that it's going in the right direction. I just think you just need these conversations to grow louder and louder. And I really think that everybody just needs to embrace diversity. And we need to really make sure there's strategies within business, not just people talking about it. Because I think that's where things that don't change. Like the conversation is really important, but then the strategy needs to be put in place to make sure things change. And then I just think more and more people out there who have the ability to should be supporting things like auticon, or just different ways of recruiting, different ways of getting everybody into the workplace. And then the world would just be a better place. And I'm excited about the future, because I really do think we're on the correct path to get there.
Holly Branson, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. If you'd like to know more about the podcast, would be interested in applying for a job as an Auticon consultant, or would like further information about how Auticon can help support your business, please visit auticon.co.uk. This episode was recorded in September 2022. Recording and production was at Strathmore Studios in Clerkenwell, London. It was engineered and edited by Billy Godfrey, and music was by The Lethargies. That's all from us this time. Thanks again for listening, and bye for now.